Well, that seems to be the thing. Is like when you take the bow and the rifle, you always shoot it with the rifle. That's what I'm the same way. I've never taken a bow and a rifle and end up shooting something with a bow.
Don't give yourself the option.
Welcome to the Just Hunt podcast.
All right, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 3. It is late January now. And today we have a remote guest, which is not that far from us, really, regionally. He's in the Finger Lakes region of New York, and if you've watched any of our stuff, you have probably seen him a good amount. It's Mr. Eric Hansen. How you doing, sir?
Good. What's happening?
Good. Eric is I'm going to cut you off because before we get into it, I just want you to show everybody where you're sitting. So Eric is a commercial vegetable farmer, essentially. Works on the family farm. And are you guys third generation or fourth?
Fourth, technically,
Fourth.
Yeah.
So he's in his conference room at the farm, and then he's got this cool painting mural that I guess his uncle did. So I just thought that was really cool. So
it is cool. It's unique.
Cool background.
Yeah. So my uncle, it's kind of a sad story, but he's a great artist, but he's got terrible arthritis. And so it's like this took him forever to do it, but he did it. So what it is kind of a history of the farm. So if you look over there in the corner, that's where that's just a rendering of where my grandfather grew up.
Yeah.
Which is where the farm technically would have started. And then that's a Danish flag. That's where my great grandparents came from. Actually, great grandparents came from. Here's where my grandmother grew up, and we skip over here to like a 50s/60s when my grandfather moved to this location. That's where he lives right now. That's what it looked like. He had some cows, and we transition. I think I'm holding this right.
Yep.
There's the first cabbage setter right there that we ever had. It was 2 rows, and that's an actual. We just gave him pictures, and he painted off those pictures. So these are all real things that we had. Tractors. There's like, I don't know if you can see that's like my aunt and their dog. And then we transition over into like the 70s. We had a lot of processing vegetables. There's a cabbage harvester there, which we don't even have anymore. And we transition into the hand cut stuff. That's just a big cabbage field. You'll get a kick out of this. If you look in that tree, that's supposed to be me. In that tree, and there's a couple deer out in that field.
Really?
I think you can see it. Yeah. Can you see? I can take it over there and see. That's my uncle. He.
Oh yeah.
that buck's awesome. That's like a 190.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was gonna say.
Yeah, and then there's.
Is this fact or fiction? This drawing.
Yeah, that's fiction. And then kind of over into the modern day over there, in the corner, and that's actually outdated now. So, anyways, it's neat. It's a good talking point. People come over here and they always want to know about it. So, that's the quick story.
So okay, cool. I don't know what you want to get into first. I mean, why don't you tell us about your season? I know you started out after a real good one. Actually, why don't you just tell everybody quickly? I mean, I think some know, but like obviously big commercial vegetable farmer, mostly cabbage is what you do. I've taken a lot of interest in Eric's operation. I think it's super cool. I like to hear about it. So I know a bit about it now. But why don't you tell us about, I guess, a little bit about that, and then, how the deer hunting ties into it.
Okay. Yeah. So when I talk about cabbage, I mean, if I didn't grow cabbage, I would be like, what's the big deal? It's not really interesting, but we're probably, one of the more known, larger cabbage farms in the country. In New York, like you say, we're in New York, and cabbage has always been grown in this area. It's very it responds well to certain climates, and we've got a climate with some lakes around us. We get a lot of natural rainfall. Really good soil. And we just over the years have gone from like my grandfather probably grew 5 acres of it maybe when he started. And today we're growing, almost 900. It's unique in the sense that it is hand harvested. It's a specialty crop that gets sent to either make coleslaw. Some of it goes into bag salads that you buy on the store shelf. We do sell stuff for sauerkraut still a little bit, and then just your normal traditional retail whole head cabbage. Those are some of the ways that it goes, but it'll blow your mind how many tons go out of here and how many truckloads and where it goes. But there's just, it's just a massive deal. We ship all the way. Sometimes we'll ship to California, not as a rule, but we'll ship to the Midwest consistently, Southeast, Northeast. Distance isn't really, distance is a factor. I don't make it like it is. But we ship all over the place. So that's kind of our unique crop here. We also grow corn, beans, and wheat just for rotation. Cabbage, you can't grow it year after year. You have to have about a 4 or 5 year rotation actually in between crops. So, why cabbage is most, productive and profitable for us, we've got to have something in between there. And that's where more of your traditional deer food comes in with the corn and beans. But they've actually grown to like cabbage too. And I kid with you guys, when you come up here to do these doe hunts, during the season, I see the deer damage on these cabbage fields, and that gets, it's pricey, And one thing if they're going to eat some soybeans, but when you start eating a, much higher dollar item, I kind of like put it in my head, like when those guys come, they're going to go to this spot and kill some of them dang things. They get expensive. So
yeah, it makes sense. Is that like 10 years ago were they eating it very much, or is it like how new is that?
Yeah, I think they've adapted really. Not near as much damage 10 years ago as there is today. Yeah.
And you don't think it's a higher deer density, do you?
I think it has a little bit with that, possibly. Certainly we get more damage in those higher deer number areas, but I kind of almost attribute it to kind of like, it is a brassica, right? Cabbage is a brassica family. So I almost think of it like when you first plant brassica, I don't know if you had this experience, but like the deer don't touch it. It takes them a while, So I think, generationally, maybe they get to eating it, and then maybe, hey, also, quite frankly, a big part of it is we're growing more acres too, so it's more noticeable. You know what I mean? The fields are in different spots, so I'm naturally going to have the more of it you got, the more damage you're going to get.
Do you think the deer? So you're in a pretty compared to the rest of the Northeast, and I'd say, you have a fairly high deer density. It's not. I don't think it's crazy high. I think there's definitely some higher areas, but it's not low.
Yeah.
Where do you think it is, like, historically? I guess I've never really asked you that or thought about that. You think it's high as it's been, or it's down, or what? I
think it's not as high as it's been. I'd say I don't know what. I'd say it's 75 to 80% of what I would consider my recollection of the most.
When do you think that peak was?
Probably 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah. Was the hunting better then, or you think it's better now?
Now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you thought.
Yeah.
What kind of led to that shift, the reduction in the population? If it was just a lack of food, or just competition, or more hunting, or why do you think it's lower now? What is that a function of, do you think?
I think us and neighbors killing more deer. More does.
Okay.
I think we've taken the approach that the novelty of sitting in a field and seeing 40 does, 50 does late season is kind of wore off. That kind of is cool at first. You're like, oh gosh, but then you don't hardly ever see any bucks.
Right.
So, I'll take less deer, and quite frankly, I take no deer and shoot the mature buck, but that's not realistic. You got to have the does, don't get me wrong. But like, I think we just really said, okay, this area, the neighbors aren't shooting does. We have to shoot more of them.
Yeah.
So, you just gotta, and that's my setup here. You guys know this, but I've got my farm here in the Finger Lakes is small pieces of woods. I own small, like I'm hunting, 5 acres of timber. My biggest is probably 25. That's probably my biggest. So and they're all scattered all over the place. I don't have them all together. So you just got to look at, by the area, and then who your neighbors are, and just, the holding capacity and all that. And just, that's the fun part about the Doe Fest is that's what's the benefit to me is when you guys come out, we can say, you turn you guys loose, get some more tags, and, you guys love the meat and stuff. So it helps out, and then you just got to manage them. I prefer to stay ahead of it myself, a little bit aggressive on that doe front. I think they'll recover fairly quickly. We just don't get bad winters around here anymore.
Yeah.
I hate to sound like a, whatever, but conspiracy, but the winters just have been mild. That's the reality of it. So we don't get a lot of winter kill. I mean, the only thing that's going to kill them is hunters and the, fawns getting chopped by the hay mower or the coyotes.
Yeah. Do you, how many does did you kill this year? Do you know? Do you have a count?
You mean everybody?
Yeah. Cumulatively.
Probably 20.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. What was that number 10 years ago?
Oh, 5, if that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's just interesting to see. So, you guys, you see a real impact then from what you do. The decisions you're making are, impacting the entire area. Because obviously the deer you have aren't just the deer that are on your property. You're going to pull deer from neighboring properties. Those deer are going to bounce back and forth. So you're definitely influencing the herd, I guess. You have a large enough scale to influence the herd in that area.
Yeah, especially late season once you start drawing all those deer in with late season.
Yeah, one caution on it though, when you do become more of that herd influencer with the food, you don't want to get carried away in that late season because you are drawing them in from. You'll see deer that you normally won't see. Right. So you can sit there on your whatever 50-acre property and say, oh my gosh, there's 60 deer in this field. Well, that's not really realistic for all the time. You're drawing them in. So you got to, that's probably if I wanted to caution somebody about it, that it would be that time of year.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. So this year going into the season, did you have many targets in mind? Well, my nature, as you know, is usually to try to find one.
Yeah. And there's not every year where there's one that grabs my attention, but this year there happened to be one that grabbed my attention, and I did not even really know or see this deer or get any information on it until I think it was October 4th. So our season was already in, and I'll never forget the night I was hunting somewhere else, and I got back in my truck and I opened my Stealth Cam app, and I thought it was a joke. Ethan, I think, was with me. And I'm like, what is this thing? I mean, we just don't, I don't know. And so from that point on, I'm like, well, I think everything else is kind of off and I'm going to go after this one. And, through October, I never saw him. I never saw him from the stand, but he'd be there 15, 20, 30 minutes after I left on several occasions. Passed a real nice mature buck just because I didn't, same reason, didn't want to kill him. So anyways, I just figured, we'll get close to rut, we're going to get him doing what they do, a little bit more daylight. And it was in November at some point that deer just totally disappeared. I figure, yep, it's the rut. You know how they are. They're all individuals, and sometimes they disappear for that time frame. Sometimes you gain them for that time frame, And I just said, when that deer comes back, if he doesn't get killed, I had 3 acres of standing corn, and it was right backed up to the bedding, and I had a great setup. Like it was going to be a blind in the corn. I was ready. And the end of this, well, not really the end of the story, but the story ended for a year anyway, because he did finally show back up in late November, and one side of his rack was bigger than the other by quite a bit. It was the most impressive side, and he snapped that thing off just above the brow tine. And it took me about maybe 3 minutes to think about it. And I'm like, I'm gonna let him go. Just let him go, and, I'm not into making the replacement side for something that bad. It's just, I don't, so anyways, he's a moral of the story is he's alive. I've learned a lot about that deer. It's been a ton of fun. And there's nothing that will motivate you more for the next season when you've got one like that's alive and he's staying on your ground and you just keep learning about him. So,
Absolutely.
You have any sheds from that deer?
Not yet. I mean, he's still holding. So, and I can't even, the weird thing about this deer is I don't know what deer it was in the past. I really don't know. I can't figure it out.
Huh. It's pretty interesting. Usually, because he's kind of like right there,
Yeah, he is now.
And you would have thought that would have been one, since he's there so much, that he was there last year.
Yeah.
You can pick him up. How old do you think he is? Yeah. Do you have any idea?
I think he was, he's no younger than 4 this year, meaning in 2024. My guess is, he's either 4 to 5 and he's going to be 5 or 6 next year. So I'm
just wondering if he's like an unrecognizable 3-year-old last year and just blew up or something crazy,
Yeah. Like, it's a possibility.
Which would have been definitely a huge jump because that's a big deer.
Yeah. He's got one eye gouged out, which to me, I look at it as a good and bad thing. It's bad for the sense of his health, but I'll take every advantage I can get next year. So,
and it'll be recognizable too when he sheds.
It'll be recognizable. When he sheds, right. You're right. Yeah. I feel pretty good. I mean, his one side is not near as bad as the one he busted off, but it'd be fun to try to look for his sheds. Yeah.
Was he blind from the beginning in that one eye? From the beginning of this year?
No. He got in a fight. Yeah. There was 3 bucks in that same area. One's got a busted ear. That buck's dead. There's another one that's got one eye. And then this buck that I am hunting or want to kill has got the busted rack and a gouged out eye. And they were all in the same area. It's nuts.
So weird. We had the same thing this year. Like all our bucks were just destroyed. I mean, the buck I killed had a gouged eye that he gouged, I don't know, probably 2-3 weeks before I killed him. Yeah. He had busted brow tine, busted beam. He had a chipped 4. And then we had another buck in the same pocket that was like, he broke off like 30 inches. Like he just, and then
took a second to figure out what deer it actually was.
Yeah. I think there was another one too. But yeah, it's just I wonder what that is. I wonder if it's like that pocket has just a low, like a good buck to doe ratio or something, or like why? Like some years it seems like they just go hard and bust everything, but I don't know.
Yeah, you get the fighter personalities in the same spots too. It lines up. Yeah. So it'd be fun. It's exciting, that certainly having that deer, and we've got the other bright side for us. I get all wound up about this and that'll probably disappoint next year, but we have a ton of survivors. Like we've had some rough years with getting killed by either neighbors or just disappearing. Yeah. But man, we've got a really, really good crop of survivors this year too. So lots of work going in. I mean, that's just, it's like I say, not that I need motivation, but that's super motivating when,
for sure,
it's easy to get out there and do your work now. And, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, especially when you have – there's a pretty damn good chance that one of those deer is going to make a significant jump if you have that many. And there's a pretty good chance he's going to be living on you too. So I'd say you have a pretty high probability of having a really good buck or maybe a couple of them to hunt next year, which is always awesome because, like, there's been years where you just don't really have much and there's not a lot to look forward to. It's hard to get, like you said, motivated to go out and do much if you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know where I'm going to be hunting or what deer I'm going to be hunting next year or, whatnot. But when you have one to focus on, I feel like it makes the off season go faster and makes me more motivated and productive to go out and scout and just to be prepared, however that preparation looks like for each individual.
I will say this though. I've done it enough over the years where you can go into a off season and say, well, I got to focus on this farm and this farm because of the survivors, right? You're better off. You better focus on all of them because you never know. And there's just so many surprises, like whether it's a new deer or a deer will shift. And it's like, man, I wish I would have spent a lot more time on that farm, but you assumed that it was going to be an off year there and it wasn't. So, the only thing I'd say is I've been caught in that situation.
I agree.
Too.
I feel like more often than not, where you think you're going to be hunting, say next November, and January, February is not often where you end up hunting. In the next November. It's sometimes everything kind of goes exactly how you wrote it up or thought it in your head, but probably more often than not that it doesn't go that way. I've found that it's still, I don't know. I still like it's just doing as much as you can in the off season to like be prepared if it does go that way. If it doesn't, you just call an audible, make a shift, and just adapt to it, which is part of the fun too.
Eric, I was just curious. I've only experienced your place during that late season time. What percentage? I mean, I think we snuck out of the blind with probably 60 deer in the field that night, and only a handful of them were bucks. I was just curious, like earlier on in the season, what percentage of those deer do you think that you have late season hanging around or living there during the earlier season or throughout the main part of the season?
We definitely gained some new ones.
Right.
Definitely gained some new ones. Where you were with me, we had an off year down there this year. We had two mature ones going into the year. One of them, he like disappeared in early October, and we got one pick in November, and I have no idea where he went. And then we had another one that was just not consistent. He's still alive. I know that one's still alive. So that to answer your question, I mean that farm was a little bit off this year for bucks, but generally, like for instance, the buck I killed last year, I shot that deer in archery season, I don't know what it was, October, 18, 20, somewhere there, and didn't kill him. And I had to wait for that deer to get back on a food pattern. So, he kind of disappeared for the rut. And then my chance was late season when he came back because we had the food. So, it's sometimes you'll see that early, and then sometimes the rut, you lose them. And then if they're still alive, that's the $1 million question, is if they're going to survive. And then they'll end up back on you if you've got the best food in the neighborhood. Or sometimes the only.
I'm just thinking about your question on my farm. I definitely gained deer late season because I have food too, obviously, and low pressure. But man, I had a lot of deer in October. Like a lot. Like I don't know if it was that much. Maybe I gained 10 or 20%. But I mean, we had a lot of deer in October too. I think if you have that established food source, and it's a food source that is desirable during the whole season, or you have aspects of that food, like, we both do, that's desirable in, August and September and October and November, right through. Because sometimes one planting is not going to be the number one hot food source for the entire season. Oftentimes it's not. But if you have something there and you have a significant amount of it, I think you're going to keep. I mean, a lot of the deer are going to be around the whole season, I think. And you do definitely pull them in certain times of the year. But I don't think it's like, well, I have late season food like corn or beans, but I don't really have many deer in October. You know what I mean? Like if you have a good mix and enough acreage, I think you can kind of hold a lot of those deer for most of the season. That's what I saw, at least. I mean, I only really had a few hunts on my farm this year, but the hunt I had in late October when I killed was like, I saw 20 deer and 10 bucks in like a, half acre plot. That's pretty, for October, that's like a huge concentration of deer. And it's not like that's a time of year they were like, so food driven. But I know that, it had to be the reason I had that many deer. We had less food on the place last year, and we still saw a lot of deer then. But I think you can pull a lot late, but it's not like you have like 10 deer on your farm in early October and then 60 late season. I think if you end up having 60 late season, you probably had like 40 or something during most of the season.
Yeah, that'd probably be good. Yeah, I mean, you're going to gain. I'd say you're going to gain. Again, there's variables here, but I'd say we gain a minimum of 25% more deer.
Yeah.
Late.
Yeah.
One thing, it's a good time to bring it up. My situation on So let me just, my main farm, which is what I'm on right now, right?
Yeah.
That's not much timber, a lot of ag. And then I do have a farm in the southern tier it's about 220 acres, and it still has farmland, but it's a lot more cover. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting revelation the other day when I went and scouted a big section of timber down near that southern tier place. So around the Finger Lakes farming area, the summer food I don't worry about one bit because there's so much alfalfa, clover, greens. I don't need it. But the general like mindset of people is, well, you don't need food plots in farm country. They got all the stuff they can eat. And then to compare, okay, you take it down in the southern tier where there's way more cover, right? And you're going to say to yourself, well, you don't need any more cover. You need food, right? But it's tricky because go back to the farmland. You need high quality cover. Don't get me wrong, but you got to have the food because the food does become a limiting factor once it's harvested. The farmers aren't going to leave it. Okay. Yeah. So like, I'm going to focus on that food that's going to hit October, November, and December in farm country. So like, food is super important, but you got to do it the right way. You got, I know you get it, but that's what I want like the people listening to think about. Don't just rule out food because you're in a farm area and you don't think you need it. Well, you need it. You just got to have it at the right time. And then the revelation that was kind of neat down in that southern tier area was we walked we walked like 500 acres of timber that day. Reminded me of what you guys do in New Hampshire. We were tired out. I think I texted you that day, Brad. It's 4 miles and we were dead. But the takeaway from it was in all that timber we walked, it was not good cover. Very, very little spots of good cover. Yeah. Okay. So what stuck out to me was, okay, yeah, there's all sorts of timber and quote unquote cover, but it was encouraging to me that I could take our 220 acres and yeah, we got the food plots and stuff like that, which is great because that's the limiting factor, but we can make that cover that much better than that thousands of acre neighbors that don't have any logging, no TSI, no nothing. So like it was just so encouraging that we could take our little piece and differentiate that. Yep. You know what I'm saying? So like, you follow what I'm trying to get through
definitely.
Here? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. I want to go back to your first point there though, because I would argue that in big ag country or farm country, I think food is actually more important, planting food plots, than it is in big timber country. And not that it isn't important in both. The difference is I think the deer in big ag country and farm country, I've seen this out near you, I've seen it in Canada big time. I feel like in general, that agriculture supports the deer numbers and the high densities that are there. If you had, say, all those fields were bare and they were low food value and low production most of the year. Maybe they were like, maybe you're growing like turf grass for golf courses or something like that. A green cover, but it was like, and they eat it, but it wasn't a high quality food source. I think you'd really struggle to support the deer numbers that you had if you didn't have that agriculture that, for a large portion of the year. I mean, as soon as green up comes up, your clovers and alfalfas and your wheats and triticale and whatever oats are feeding those deer. And then they're really fed through the summer, through the fall, and then, late season, it gets a little tough. But I think that those deer are more accustomed to just going field to field and just attaching themselves to that big destination food source. Whereas in timber country, they're more reliant on the browse and the natural foods. So you can, and I see this a lot where, I hunt when I plant food. They definitely will come to my food plots in the big woods or in, big timber country, but they're less reliant on it. It's not like they're patterned to it all the time. They'll use it. They, in certain points of the year, they'll come to it and they'll use it like consistently. But like, it's not like, oh, I got all the food and I just have the deer all year and they relate to it. That's just not the case. They come and go and they move around. But I feel like in big ag country, like I said, they're just more reliant on that food because there's less, other food sources. And generationally, that's what they do. They're really relying on that agricultural crop to feed them to support the numbers and the density of deer. So once that stuff is gone and harvested, and you have it, I feel like those deer are like looking for that next. Okay, what's the cornfield that is too wet and never got combined, or it hasn't got combined yet? They're gonna go there. It's like, okay, what farmer made a mess and there's combine was, not doing a good job. Well, they're gonna go there. Or what beans, whatever it is, right? Like, so I think that like it's actually an even bigger deal, and I see that in Canada. It's like when those food sources start to dwindle, and you have the food, it's like. All the deer come there. All the deer are there. And
then you start adding historically having it in the same spot.
Yeah.
And then you can really, because crops rotate, stuff rotates, and the deer, even they don't know they have no idea that corn's going to get chopped for dairy feed and be a barren wasteland in a month. I mean, they don't know that. But if you've got a 5-acre corn plot in farm country that year after year is going to be something, I'm a firm believer that they remember that stuff.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they have to. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like if you can do that, like I can plant the same good food source on a property and like have deer come and go throughout the years. They'll come some years they'll be there, some years they won't. They'll be there for a couple days and they'll leave. But I feel like I said, I just think those deer are more like searching out those feeding opportunities in ag country, because that's what that's what they do. That's what they're relying on. Yeah, obviously they rely on natural browse. I'm not saying that. They definitely eat a lot of natural browse, but I don't think that the natural browse, like in particular in like your area really, with like the limited cover and natural browse you have, would support the deer numbers if you didn't have the the large scale agriculture production. So because of that, those deer are relying on that because they don't have the natural. They have to have that. So they're more focused on it. Whereas a deer that lives, in the hill country or big timber or whatever, he's going to go to those food sources. But like if that, the one cornfield gets chopped for silage, he's like, whatever, let's go up on the ridge and eat acorns, or go on this cut and eat, this is like, what? Yeah, it's fine. Like it's 10% of my focus. It's like one of like 8 different food sources where it's like it's like it could be maybe 50% of the food that they're eating in any given time, right? So it's I think it's a bigger deal. Yeah. So it gives you the illusion like it's not a big deal, but like to your point, when the crops are gone, it's like they are okay, what's the next staple that's going to allow me to sustain myself for this next period of my life, So I think it's just as big a deal. Honestly, and it seems like it pulls deer way more in ag country than it does anywhere else that I've seen. Even big timber, you would think it would pull it more because it's like the lowest hole in the bucket in big timber. But I don't think the deer are as reliant on it, so it's just not. It doesn't move the needle as much. That was like a big thing for me that I've like realized, because I used to think it was the opposite. But after growing food and hunting and owning property in big timber and mountains and whatever, and then owning it in farm ground, it's like, oh no, like planting food in farm ground seems to move the needle far more than it does in like timber country and hill country. So that was something that I've.
So a lot of that big timber country that you hunt, you don't own, correct?
Yeah. I mean, the ones that I have a couple. It's like 2, but even I see it with other people as well that are in that area. They're planting food. I mean, it's similar results, and I've done it on 2 different properties, both in big timber, mountain country.
Yeah. So I guess what I was going to say is, if say you owned it, and saying what you said, then would you think that going in and doing a bunch of timber work like TSI, create natural browse, what do you think would happen there on that big? Well, don't get me wrong. Like,
okay, how do I say this? So if you you selective cut 200 acres, right, of timber, that early succession growth is like tons and tons an acre, right? That's going to feed deer. Like you can't compete with 200 acres of early succession growth from a cut with like a 2-acre food plot. Like it's it's just way more food. That's a way bigger draw. than that. I mean, do you think in just like to contextualize it? You don't have like a 200 acre clear cut near you, do you? Like that you can think of, like, so that's what I'm saying. The deer don't have that. They don't like, if you have a clear cut, it's probably like an acre that someone cut, maybe because they want to plan it, right? They're not just letting it regen. I mean, so you probably
we've cut acres of timber. We've cut acres of timber ourselves.
Right. So I just don't think the scale of the food in this country can really, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, you will attract deer, but I just don't think it's as big a deal. I think they're like, that's great, but like that's not what we eat here. Like it's almost like a dessert for them or something. Like, like the meat and potatoes is the mass crop and the browse, and then the other stuff is good, but they're not relying on it. Whereas I feel like I said in ag country, they are relying on that. Up here they could just do without. I mean, half the deer I shot, the big antler deer, they've never eaten from a food plot. They've never seen an ag field, so.
I know that I know you have some different spots, and I know that one in particular you plant year after year. But in any of that one's not more of a mountain setting. Have you?
No, it's not. But the food's very similar. Like it's the same food.
But just going back to what we were talking about with like with the mountain setting versus farmland.
Yeah.
And having deer where the deer know where the food is coming back year after year after year. I know you've experimented with putting plots in certain places, but have you done that repeatedly over a couple year span and see if there's been any increase over time? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, even in some of the mountain places, and it hasn't been a lot of food. It's been like quarter acre food plots. So and I don't know, Eric, I think you'd agree with me, but like the difference between like a quarter acre cereal grain or clover plot and like acres of grain, they're very different as far as like what they attract. Like they're just, the scale of it is, they're different things. So it's tough for me to say, I planted a quarter acre of clover in the mountains on a log row, which we have done, like on timber company land and with permission. And I mean, the deer definitely use it. They walk down it, they check it, but it's not like they're coming there to eat like all the time. They'll come through. They'll
go on A to B. They notice
and then
it.
They go on the next mountain and they stay there and then they're here and then they're here. And then it's not like all of a sudden you plant this little clover plot and they're like, whoosh, and just hang out there. It's just not like that at all. So, I mean, and also by the nature of what it is, it's tough to plant 4, 5, 6, whatever acres of grain in the mountains, right? Like it's hard to find that big of an area that's flat and not covered with boulders that you can even get to. So,
or get a lime truck too.
I bet it would be effective, but I still don't think it'd be as effective as like 200 acres of cut that's regrowing, or like a mountainside of oak that's dropping. That those deer, I mean, that's for thousands of years. Maybe I don't know how old are whitetails. 1 million years old? I don't know how old, but for that long they've been, that's what in this country, that's what they eat, and they're relying on that mass crop if it's there, and then browse, and then like I said, all this other stuff is almost like supplemental to them, I feel like, whereas it's more of a staple in ag country. So that's something that I feel like I've realized, and at least that's my theory.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I can't speak for the mountain stuff like you can, but on that one property I'm talking about it's not as mountainous as what you're used to. It's got agriculture. It's got there's corn and clover and hay. The ground's a lot rougher, so you don't have that rich soil like I have in the Finger Lakes. But so it's slightly different than what you're saying, But I think in that area, that setting, it's almost like where maybe in the Finger Lakes, I've got 75 to 85% field. The other one would be the southern tier ground would be more like a 60-40 woods to field, something like that. So
that makes sense. I mean? I would. I think you're spot on with that. That makes a lot of sense. So what do you think food in both settings that you have draw equally, or do you think one draws over the other? Or what's your thought on that?
I'd say that southern tier will draw more concentrated, because I've got keep in mind, I've got 220 acres together.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have anywhere. I have, don't get me wrong, I have 220 acres together in the farm country, but it's not timber. Like, I don't have the cover. Yeah. So, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's a bit different.
Yeah. But
and you don't really have you probably have more acres of food down there concentrated in one spot than you do anywhere else, right? So it's not really a fair comparison, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We're just trying to draw them. Like in the farm country, we got a little, I'll have, anywhere from half acre to probably my biggest plot would be 3 acres, probably, probably 4 acres would be my biggest plot.
Does your dad and grandpa know you're leaving that much?
It's part of the salary. So they're all just scattered out, trying to draw them in and draw them in, but also keep them tight, because I don't have a lot, they don't have to go far.
Yeah.
And they're going to get in trouble versus, 220 together, you got a little more room for error, if you follow me.
Yeah, and that farm you have down there sets up kind of good to isolate them in the cover. There's not a lot of immediate pressure right next to that cover, because you're kind of like in an isolated pocket, which works out pretty good.
Yeah. It's great just to have. I mean, you're seeing it now, Brett, because you're buying properties, different areas, and the thing about deer that's so freaking awesome is you never ever stop learning, and if you do, then you're dead. So everything, you just keep learning about them, and whether it's different areas, different deer. I mean, that's what makes it so dang addicting, is because every deer is different, every property is different, every area is different, and it's just, man, I don't know, we soak it up, and it's what keeps us coming back for sure, and it's always going to be that way. I mean, what the heck, I don't know how you get tired of it, because if you're into it and understand it and to that depth, then you realize that every year, every season, every deer is going to be different. Every story,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that don't, have the opportunity to, I guess, manage property or own property, can't necessarily relate and don't really understand, I guess, what we get out of it. It's just a lot different when you don't have the ability to manipulate, to, plant stuff. A lot of the, permission property where you may be on it one year and gone the next, it's tough to pass deer, and let them go. So it is definitely a privilege what we get to do, and the connection that we get with the deer. And you can have that in some areas without doing that. Like some of the mountain stuff on, a lot of it's, land that we don't own, or it's public land. So we can't really do a whole lot with it. But I can definitely still have those relationships with the deer. It's just different because we're not like, we're more consuming the resource there, where I feel like, in our case, Eric, when we have these properties, we're more stewards of the, habitat and the land. And I feel like we are able to give more than we take. And there's a certain appreciation and satisfaction, I guess, from that aspect of it. And I think people, given the opportunity, would probably do the same thing that we do if they could, or maybe they wanted to. And I don't think some people don't realize it until they actually have the opportunity to do it, how rewarding it can be. But it's just a different type of connection and interaction, I guess, with, hunting and the animal.
Yeah. I think I've told you this 100 times when you started buying ground. I mean, I tell people that you will never, ever regret it. It's one of the best things that you'll ever do is buy ground. For me, I have the farmland, which predominantly is used for, I got to make a living on it. But, I've also got the recreational stuff too. So I've got a little bit of both. And I've just been blessed in my life I'm a land buyer. Like as a farmer, you generally don't sell land, right? So we always are buying land. And, your first focus is the production quality of it. Yes. But in my case, I enjoy the deer hunting more than anybody else in my family's history has. So like I've taken a liking to the what some farmers would call the junk stuff, the swamp, the timber. They don't want anything with that. But like, I look at it like, oh, all right, let's buy that 100 acres of dirt for stupid money but I get this 10 acres of woods with it. Man, that goes nice with this other 20 I got. So, it's, for me, it's both ways. And, I'm fortunate enough to do what I do. I'm out there with them and, get to live it most every day. So, buying land is something I would encourage everybody to do. It takes time, planning, money to make it happen. It's not getting any cheaper to buy.
No.
But, as you know, Brett, there's pockets that are still what I'd call, I don't know, undervalued, but reasonably valued. Yeah. And then there's pockets, and trust me, I live it because I've got stuff that's $12,000 an acre, and I've got stuff that I can still do for, $4,000 an acre. And those numbers were a lot different, 10 years ago. I should have bought more. And, my grandfather and dad always say that the only regrets you have in farming and land buying are the ones you didn't buy. And that's the reality of it. We don't sell ground as we're doing what we do, but we sure wish we didn't pass or not get ones over the years. I mean, I could write
I've never bought anything.
We could write a book about that.
I've never bought anything that I regretted, not even close. For me, you probably grew up in that, I guess, environment where acquiring land was, not only awesome for deer hunting, but it was your livelihood. So it was probably like common practice. It was a little bit different for me. I mean, my parents came from the city, so they didn't own land. And even when I grew up, we lived on like an acre, half acre, whatever, just a house lot. I did have woods behind me that I hunted and went, recreated in. But I remember it was, I guess, it was when I was in college, my dad bought 60 acres, in the hills, the mountains. And
what sparked him to do that?
He just wanted to get away from people, and he ended up building a house there eventually, but he bought it, and I think he bought that in 2007.
That's somewhere they'd go, like camper or go out there and just kind of hang out before the house was built?
Yeah, so he had it for a number of years. Was it 2007 or 6? It was right around that time frame. But anyway, he bought it, I think, with the intention to eventually build something up there, and just wanted to get away and have a place. It has a beautiful view too. It's like an awesome spot. And that was really cool. I was like, he let me do kind of whatever. And that's where I started planting food plots, was on that piece, and however long ago, like, what is that now? Almost 20 years ago, I guess. And then we used to go up there and have we used to camp out up there and have like fires in the summer and hang out. And then he ended up building a barn up there. And so I was still in college then. So we were having like barn parties, which I don't know if you guys used to have barn parties in high school or college, but we did some of that, and it was fun. And like we, just recreated on it, and we deer hunted on it. And it was actually like a lot better deer hunting back then than it is now, which is like strange because I feel like it's just deer hunting. I think the hunting's gotten better in general. But it's just that property has not, although, I have had more food on it. I actually don't really, I put it in like annual clovers just because it just doesn't really produce anymore, the type of deer I'm looking for. But that was like kind of, I got a taste of it there, but it's still like my dad's property, and it's not like a deer property, right? Like I can do a lot on it, but it's not like do whatever you want, free reign, whatever. And then at the end of the day, like he's not a deer hunter. So like if he wants to drive his side by side or hike through the wood, like there, he's just going to do it, and that's fine. Like obviously, but like, so it's tough to go 100% when you know that like you don't have total control. But then in, I guess 2014, when my wife and I bought our first house, it had 66 acres, I think, with it. And then that was like the dream. Like finally like own my own stuff. And it wasn't just like a little tiny piece. It was a pretty nice chunk. 66 acres is, for someone that's never owned land, is a pretty good piece of land. And that was like, it was awesome. I mean, it's so fun to be able to do whatever you want and manipulate the habitat and the land the way you want and just see it work. And it did work there. Had some good hunts there, and it was fun to watch, and it was like just a super enjoyable way to like spend your time. You feel productive when you're working on your own ground. Like you feel like because you are being productive, you're investing into that, you're improving the value and the quality of the land. And not just in your eyes and other people's eyes. I mean, I ended up selling that lot or that piece of land. And I did really well on it, selling it. And so it was honestly like kind of like changed my life, that whole process of acquiring that land and developing it. Because
if you have that mindset that like you guys are both talking about, you're never going to leave it like worse than you found it. You're always going to be trying to figure out ways that you can make things a little bit better.
I mean, I look at listings and I'm like, man, if you could do this, and this, like that would make this big, clean up this and put this in here. And, it's like,
you just call me about those. We have weekly conversations about those.
Yeah.
Then having that experience on one, it just makes it easier to look at places that other people might look past and be able to see kind of what you can do with it.
That's the other thing I was actually talking to Tim Ken about this, the Whitetail Properties agent that I work with a little bit in New York, and we've worked with Tim on a couple other things in the past, Just Hunt Club. But he just said, he's like, a lot of people just don't have the vision. They can't see what it could become. They don't understand what it could become. They don't know what it will take to get there. And so it's kind of like scary for them because, I don't know. But, once you've done it and you've like got your hands dirty with it and gone through the process of, improving access and putting food in or whatever, doing a timber harvest or a timber sale, it all becomes super feasible, and it helps you to see the vision of what a particular property or even piece of real estate could become. And so that's, a valuable thing to be able to have that vision and see something that maybe a lot of the market, or not the market, but a lot of other potential buyers maybe don't see.
Just get started. Like we made so many mistakes when we got going on this stuff, and I could talk all night about mistakes, but you just can't have I think you got to get past the fear of getting started. The fear of maybe it's running, maybe it's cutting your first tree down. Like it's okay. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. Do a little research. I mean, don't go cutting down all the red oaks, but I mean, like,
what about those black walnuts in the background there? Is that tree still alive?
That might be. I don't know.
Looks like it, doesn't it?
They kill the crops. We do have black walnuts on the river bottom. They grow and they like good soil on the river bottom, but nothing grows underneath them. But I mean, cut this stuff down. Like I talk to young people, and you talk about your dad buying the ground, and like it wasn't really yours, and you were on it, but it wasn't yours. I talk to so many people, and I can relate. When I was younger, my grandfather didn't want me to cut down any trees, and I could tell you stories where I thought we were in a place when Gramps was not going to see us. Like we're out cutting trees down, trying to make this habitat better. And that guy would come and he'd show up on his side by side, and he'd pull up next to us and like, what are you doing? This tree's not very good. We're trying to make this better. So like I talk to guys that are just getting into it, and they still got the generation that doesn't quite get it. And I guess I've been fortunate that they've let go over the years, and they've seen that, I love it. And, they've aged out, and they realize the world's not coming to an end if I cut down an acre of timber.
Yeah.
But, so it's like that whole process has been interesting to say the least. My grandfather now is, he's 93, and he doesn't really know what's going on, but anyways, he's let it go. He's, basically transferred all that property to me anyway. But the transition from, I see young people come to me and like, man, Cody, right? I mean, our own
that's a great
Cody. I mean, he's struggling.
Example.
he can't get his grandfather to leave a half acre of corn. He gets the combine out and you gotta do it.
And half the time it's Cody planted the corn.
Right.
For that, it's
Yeah.
not like it's his grandfather's cornfield. He's trying to convince him to leave like half acres. No, Cody went in a field that wasn't planted and like planted a food plot, and then at the end of the season, his grandfather just combines his food plot.
They just can't, they can't help themselves. And my grandfather he still comes. He'll see these corners I leave next to stuff, and he's like, pretty expensive ground. I can't be leaving that, the way I look at it, and I tell Cody this too, because he works hard and stuff. It's like, you got to get through to him that if you make enough, you have to be able to be profitable, right? Like if we're skimming by here, it'd be hard for me to go leave 5 acres of corn, but you just have to be profitable with stuff. And then you just be able to have to let it go. And you have to obviously get the family to buy in that there's value in that, right? I mean, there's value in improving the deer herd, and that brings value to the family. It brings recreation. It brings, good times, memories, etc. So it's hard. It's hard. And, in anything, I guess the personalities are what make or break things.
Well, and it's obviously the other part of why it's hard is, that land is dual purpose. And the number one purpose for it is not deer hunting, right? So like, understandable. Yeah. Whereas like your other property, that is the probably sole purpose, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you do have a farmer on there, but I mean, he probably comes second to the deer stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah, we rent some of the farm ground out, but it gets less and less. And I finally got it through. Even my dad. I'm like, what is our primary purpose at that property? This is the 220 acres in the Southern Tier, right? Like what is it? Okay, and I don't think he ever thought of it like. Once upon a time it was, we're going to go and just get away and you'd stay there with the family and enjoy the scenery. Well, they don't really do that much anymore. So when I asked him the question, like, what is the primary purpose of that ground? And the answer is, it's in my eyes and in theirs for the most part now, they don't hunt a lot, but it's deer, right? So I look at it like then every decision that we make down there with the ground is deer related. Right. It's not having an Airbnb and renting a place out or having a fancy view down through here. It's what can we do to make it better for the deer? Because that's the primary reason we have it.
Yeah. And if there's another purpose, you can dual purpose it for something that doesn't affect that, then great. But
yeah.
And it's been a long evolution at that place. Cause I remember we sitting there and I was like, those oak trees are planted in a row and they're pretty good size. They're 30, 40-year-old trees. So
I'm old enough, Matt, where I got pine trees I planted that I'm ready to cut down.
Yeah,
that tells you something. That's old, man. That's old.
So they do grow bigger after time.
Well, I got some of them too close and the wrong varieties and stuff, and I'm like, I was in them and I was like, man, they could be better, but I'm probably gonna leave them for a little bit. But,
so how long ago did you plant those ones?
20.
Yeah.
Probably 20 years. Yeah.
You're what, planting another 500 plus this year again? Like it just never ends.
Oh, I want to plant probably 1,000 to 1,200 this year. Yeah. But I wanted different varieties, Yeah. With those ones I'm talking about were white pine and they're too close together and they start dying out underneath, but it's not a lost cause because it's kind of a unique where they're at. It's a unique thermal kind of. I don't have that. It's the whole reason I planted it. I missed 20 years ago. I didn't do everything wrong. I looked at it like, what do I need here? And what we don't have in this area, the deer didn't winter in this area a lot, and so I said we need thermal cover. So I had these open areas that we didn't farm anymore. They're kind of no good and hilly. I just started planting pines because I knew at least I had the vision that in 10, 20 years, I could turn this into cover and there's no thermal cover. So why not do it? And then, I mean, they love it. They do it. I just wish I did it a little bit differently, but it works.
Yeah. That's the one thing I haven't really haven't seen yet. I haven't been able to watch a property I mean, I guess my dad's, it's been a while now. But I mean, I wasn't really trying to think. Back then I wasn't doing a lot of like, call it heavy lifting and big changes on it, right? It was like little stuff. But I haven't actually seen like 20 years later after you made, I haven't had the chance to see that. I haven't ever had, I mean, the longest I've had property, I guess, is probably 10 years ago is when I started buying it. A little over 10 years, I guess now. So I haven't seen that long-term thing, like even like planting an apple tree and having it grow big, or, like I've had them grow and produce apples, don't get me wrong, but not, or even an oak, like Matt said on your place. Like I haven't seen that. That's kind of like hard for me. And probably if you've seen it, it's easier for you to see the results and realize that like, it seems like a long time, but it goes like this. And next thing you know, that tree's 40 feet tall, right? Or whatever.
My grandfather in 1990, when he bought that property in the Southern Tier, one of the first things he did is just start planting pines in rows.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was a big one of those things where I had a really hard time. I started hacking those trees down and putting food in because they were totally worthless, right?
Yeah.
And my grandmother, she was not happy that those trees, and she doesn't like change as it is, but like they ran their course. They're totally worthless, right? Yeah. And I'm out here. I rented a bulldozer and an excavator, and we're making a pile and burning the things and trying to do it when she's not around. But But what I tell her is, okay, we may have cut down 500 of those trees that you planted, when you bought the property, but I've planted 2,000 since then. Yeah. So it's just that, it's like they run its course, and like in your property, where they planted stuff, where they built their house, it had nothing to do with deer. It was strictly about the view. Right. And then, what are we going to plant here? Let's just plant some pines. That sounds good. They had no idea why, other than just put some cover. So it's neat. Again, going back to buying land, like, and the longer you own it, the more stories you're going to have to tell. But I see it, and again, I've been blessed to have my grandparents around, and my parents as well. But my grandfather was the one of those pine trees, and him and Grandma planted those things on that tree setter. And oh God, that was that day when she come up through there and saw those things get put in a pile and burned. That was I felt a little sympathy, but at the same time, I was quick to remind her that we've replaced them by about 3 or 4 times.
Trees don't live forever. I think a lot of people have this notion that like if you don't do anything, it's just always going to be like that forever. The woods it's not like trees die; they're going to fall down.
Sure.
And they have a purpose. Yeah. And if you have a healthy timber management plan, you're going to cut trees. There's a time when they're mature and they're ready to go, and when they're not, they've reached maturity, whether it's marketable timber or it's just they're no longer serving habitat anymore.
Unfortunately, every tree isn't marketable timber. That's I've got a lot of those.
Or like in your case, no longer serving its purpose and the habitat needs. Then it's time for it to go, and you plant more. But it's cool that you've been a part of that long enough to see the point where like these trees went from a seedling to, hey, they're done now. They've ran the course. It's hard to visualize and look that far in the future, even for me, honestly. Like I plant trees, don't get me wrong, but I almost do it because I know I should, not because I actually, you know what I mean? Like, not like I'm like, oh yeah, someday maybe I'll see a result from this. I'm going to do it because I know I should. And, it's like, when's the best time to plant a tree? It's like today, right?
But 10 years ago was the best time, but the second best time is today.
Right. Yeah. So I do it, but it's cool to actually see, real results from it.
Well, and some quicker than others. And, I see like I'm always talking about pine trees, and the pine trees for us we just had a lot of like fields. It was old farm fields, and that was what was available to buy. And like I said, this is down the Southern Tier, and it's not good farm ground. So we'd buy these farm fields for, $2,000 an acre, and we want deer cover. So one of the quickest, best things you can do is put pines in there. So that's why we've had so many pines over the years. There's other things. Don't get me wrong. We got oaks, and now we're doing chestnuts. That's like our latest craze. But we'll see how that turns out in 5 years or so. But yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Well, I think probably, and we've talked about this, I think pine is kind of I think you're using it pretty generically. But like you're planting evergreens or conifers, I actually think that's probably, I'd have to say, probably the most preferred deer tree species for cover that I can think of that you can plant. That's going to be like easy to plant, not going to get browsed.
Yeah.
And stays deer cover for the longest period of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, we have a lot of them naturally. I mean, what would you say? Some areas we have are like 75% pines or conifers in this area. Yeah. But I see so many of them, and like when you have those big the deer love them. I mean, even naturally, not ones that are planted, just like we just have like, a mountaintop of them, and the deer love to be in that stuff in general. Like
I have a little pocket of them right on the hillside behind my house, and there won't be deer in there until all of a sudden this time of year rolls around. I'll start looking out and seeing them hanging out in there. They definitely
and even like where I hunt in Ohio, pines, there's not many, but there's some stands of like red and white pines.
Talking about all those big planted pieces where it's just rows and rows and rows of them.
Yeah, and they're like little pockets, but like, and I see it all over. You can see it in Kentucky and Ohio and whatever, Virginia. It's like predominantly like the natural tree species is like hardwoods, right? But then like there's these pockets of, I assume, planted. You have the cedars too that grow up, but like these are more planted pockets. But whenever I see those, it seems like there's just a ton of deer activity around them.
When we were seeing those, some of them seemed like they were planted really close together. Yeah, like it would be inconvenient for a person to walk into them, and there was. Granted, there's a lot of deer there in the area we were in general, but there were definitely highways going in and out of.
I'll tell you this though, on those pine plantations down south, they have a ton of pines too. But it seems like when they're like 5 to 10 feet tall, some of them are so competed and they grow so close. I think it's just like that. I don't think anything wants to be in there. But when they thin them and there's space around them and they have the thermal cover aspect and they can actually get through them, I think that's like when they're ideal. And they just, a lot of them, especially when they're not competed and they aren't starting to self-prune. So a lot of the times pines, if they're in like mature stands and they're competed, like they lose their lower branches. So there's no like ground level cover. I still think there's thermal cover that they appreciate and relate to. But if you can have like both, the thermal cover, like to hide the stuff above them, but then you also have that, they're spaced out enough so you have that structure down low. I think that's ideal. I think it's like the primo time. And that doesn't happen it takes a while for them to get to the height to provide that cover, thermal cover and the windbreak and the structure to bed. But when you're in that zone where
once
it's
it
like,
gets to that point,
you have a good spacing, and they aren't starting to stealth prune and really compete with each other. It's like, man, I don't think you can really beat it.
It's like you're looking at a cut on the map and you're not really sure until you get there how good it's going to be, and then you get in it. And it's like, oh, this is.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with these plantings too. Like there's certain times where they're really good. Like when they first like thin that stuff down south, I'm sure it's awesome. I don't think they're relying it so much on thermal cover, but it is good. Just like disc cover. I mean, there's maybe better cover, but in the north, it's having pines or conifers, whatever, evergreen trees, I think is awesome. I've been planting on my place, and I don't really have many. I have a couple in New York. I have I don't know, maybe like 20 or 30 spruces in one pocket, but like I'm going to start putting them all over the farm. I think like you talked about your rut field or whatever, Eric, like that's a great way to like make deer cover out of, like you did, out of a field. I think it's one of the best ways too. As long as you're not like, so you don't plant them in rows anymore, right? For deer, or do you?
Right. Ideally. I mean, I have some in rows, but when you're on a tractor with a tree planter, if you're going to do volume, that's what you need. So it's, is it rows? I mean, it's kind of always is a row, right? Because you're driving, but we don't tend to make like we're planting a field. Yeah.
Yeah.
You try to, yeah.
Well, I think if you're planting them for like a screen or like along an edge, that's
Right.
fine.
Right.
But it seems like they do better when it's like a couple trees here, 5 trees here. It's kind of like pocketed.
Yeah.
If you can,
Yeah, if you can. That's when, as I say, that's when you break out the Mexican planting power, and
you have the luxury of that.
We've got H2A labor that comes from Mexico, and so when they come in the spring, there's off days we're not planting, and that's when I get the trees. So I was like, hey, I'll grab 5 or 10 of them with shovels, and they're right at home, and I'll scatter them out. And I remember one time, you really got to watch them though, because I set them out one year, and I thought I explained well. I could speak Spanish pretty good, and I thought I explained well how I want these done. And I was planting a screen, so it was a line. I didn't need them mixed. And I went back over there. Luckily, it wasn't too much longer after they started it, and they had them things. I mean, they were 8 inches apart, and they're like planting cabbage, right? Yeah. And I was like, man, no, that's not gonna work. So we had to dig a few of those up, but yeah, they'll work. You just they do not think about deer. They'll just they'll go and they'll put them in the ground. You just you
want these plants in the ground, no problem. We'll put them in there.
They'll get rid of them in a hurry. 10 inches,
especially when they're 8 inches apart.
Where the heck did all those go? Right.
Jeez,
right.
That's funny.
So there's always we could lots of stories, but we just keep plugging away. Every year is different projects, and it's addicting, man. It's addicting. It gets harder though as you get older, kids and activities, and it's cool now. You start to get the kids involved in it a little bit more. Mine are 11 and 14, so my 14-year-old daughter, she's starting to see it a little bit. Like she's starting to equate like the work we do to the success you have, and so she's getting into a little bit. She planted some actually miscanthus she planted last year with me. She's got that, and she'll plant some trees and stuff. So it's it gets harder to do that, but I guess if you've got a farm that you've kind of nurtured over the years and brought, it does get to a point where it's more fine tuning. You don't have as many giant projects. I'd like to think. So it's a little bit more fine tuning, just finesse stuff now and then.
Well, that's what I'm seeing, because I went so hard on mine the first 12 months. I mean, I did a lot on it, like some big changes, like a lot. And it's like nice that this year I'm like, okay, I have some projects I got to do or I want to do, but it's nothing like crazy like that I need to this is going to be a huge undertaking. Like I'm going to plant more trees, just work on the food that I got and do some more TSI. There's nothing crazy I need to do though. It's like I can manage it. Yep. But I spent a lot of time on that place, like up until this deer season, so I bought it in July, basically July to that August. That year was just, there was did a lot of stuff on there. But now everything is, all the major projects for now are done. The only other thing, and I know I've talked about it and it just bothers me, and I think it may be something that I need to eventually accept, but the invasives in Western New York, Southeast New York, then through right through PA down Ohio, Kentucky, man, they're getting so bad. The bush honeysuckles, I got some pockets on my place that
you'll be driving down the road and just every tree is getting choked out by something.
It's crazy. That's the one thing I don't know. It's something I'm thinking about, but it's such a huge project, and I don't even know. It's almost to an extent I know you forestry mulch it, right?
But that doesn't.
No.
That'll get you by, but really, to your point, it's overwhelming to think that you got to go around the stump treat.
Yeah, I know.
Honeysuckle. It's mind-boggling. Yeah, I haven't done it. I forestry mulched it when I just let it go for a while, and you take the mulcher in there and where they don't even pass through anymore, open it up. But I'm not sitting here thinking to myself that's going to be a permanent solution.
No.
It's not. I mean, I haven't sprayed any of it. I kind of want to see like, all right, what starts to come? You know, do I get lucky and maybe get some other things growing in there?
Have you had when did you start doing like mulching it?
Oh, maybe 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah. Well,
4 probably.
Have you seen anything come back that's worth anything, or is it more of like stump sprouts off of the main stumps of the honeysuckle just coming right back? Or
I don't know, because the most honeysuckle I've done is in the last year or two.
Okay, I got you.
The other stuff prior to that wasn't really as much honeysuckle.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. I have to get back to you on that. I don't know. I'll tell you. Don't worry. We'll see.
Because that's my biggest. I mean, then the other thing that I'm worried about too. I got this one in the middle of the farm, this like patch of honeysuckle, and it's, you know, it's not pure honeysuckle, right? But it's pretty predominant there, and it's acres. It's not like a little patch; it's acres of it. I don't know how many. I mean, it's over an acre, maybe like 5, 10. I don't know. It's a substantial portion. And I have it in other places of the farm, but it's really bad right there. And I'm like, if I cut trees close to that patch, is that just going to fill in the void in sunlight? Did I open the canopy? Is it just going to fill in with that honeysuckle? Like, I'm worried about that now. I'm like,
I think it will, because I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it. I thought I was doing a stroke of business by cutting down a bunch of poplar trees. Like, these things are worthless. And it just blew up with honeysuckle. Yeah. I mean, you can guess, you can kind of look at like, all right, well, I got it over here. It might be there. But man, you open that thing up, you're going to find out. And if it's honeysuckle, you'll find out in a hurry.
Yeah. So
I don't know what's better. I don't know what's better or worse. I don't know.
The reason that I have the patch in my farm too is I had a lot of ash on it. Well, not when I owned it, right? But I had ash, and that was like a heavy ash pocket of the farm, and all the ashes died. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I probably just answered my own question, right? Like, it's probably, if I cut heavy around there, that's probably what's coming back.
I know.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, I don't know what it is now for canopy if there's nothing growing on the floor. I mean,
there's not much.
That isn't any good either. That's not any good either. So I mean, you could do it, but then you're going to create more work for yourself if you want to get rid of the honeysuckle.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I don't know. And then I know there's some guys that literally have crews, and that's what they do, like contractors.
Yeah.
But they're not cheap.
No, I can't imagine that.
No. Like, I know. Do you remember the? I think it was a Kramer. Is it Kramer? The guys from like Southwest PA.
Oh, from Midwest Whitetail?
Yeah. Was it the Kramers? I think that's their name. I've talked to them a bit. I think the two brothers, they're similar. I know one of them's a lefty. I don't know. I think that rings a bell because it's just, I remember seeing him drawing his Hoyt on Midwest Whitetail left hand. I've talked to them a little bit. I asked them, they had a crew come in on one of their places. And I actually think it was Zach Fehrenbaugh's cousin, Ben. I think he does it. And I was thinking I could contact him and ask him, but like, I know it's not cheap. I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's like a crew of like 5 guys and it takes days. You know what I mean? It's like, geez. I mean, it was like, I think tens of thousands of dollars. And it's like, I don't know. It's one that I've been like wrestling with. And I'm like, it's almost like I don't want to open that can of worms. And like,
maybe I'll turn the Mexicans loose on it.
Send them west.
Imagine that. Well, you gotta be careful giving them Roundup, but I mean, Roundup kills them. I mean, they're easy to kill in the sense that you don't have to put much on them, but it's just the volume of them. I mean, there's a ton of them. You know, geez,
I got some areas where the trunks are like, you know, that big.
Yeah, those are.
And they're just like growing into these nasty. I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
That's the stuff that I took the mulcher through. Okay. I mean, they're that giant, those giants. So, I mean, these things are, they're 10 foot tall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But they mulch good. I mean, they're soft, you know, and they're shallow rooted. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what comes back. I don't know. I mean, it's better. It'll be better for the next 5 years than it was.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the heck to.
Yeah. Whether you just play.
Whether I just let it be, and hopefully it doesn't. It's gonna spread. It's spreading. I mean, obviously that's how it got here. It spreads. So I don't know. It's like, I don't think it's like the worst deer cover ever. I think that when it gets what you're talking about, it's not really good. But I think if it's not bad, it's not terrible. I mean, it is some cover. It's thick, but I mean, it's.
I got a friend in Ohio that says that deer eat it constantly. I've never seen deer.
Who said that?
Here. I have a friend of mine in Ohio.
Really? Oh shit! Yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't know if they eat it here. Maybe in the spring when it's green.
I mean, it's one of the first things to green
first.
up.
It greens up.
It does.
That's when you realize it's bad. Is like April when nothing else is green and all those invasives green up, and it's like, oh my god! Like it's all you see is every invasive is green, and none of the natives are, and it's like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah.
When I went down, I went to the farm in, I guess it was Easter last year, and then we went. The family went to Ohio and Kentucky, went to Cincinnati, and then we actually shed hunted the farm that I killed my Ohio buck, this month on. And I remember driving through that area, and like you can't even notice it this time of year because it's like not really green anymore.
Right.
But it was that time when none of the natives were green and all the invasives were, and it was like made me sick to my stomach driving around down there. I was like, oh my, this is depressing. Like it's so bad. It's like it's crazy. I don't know. I don't really hear people talking about it as much, but it's like it's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But to your point, I mean, it's at a certain stage of growth. It does provide some. Yeah. It's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, I'd argue that it's better than stand some mature timber with nothing on the ground. So
for sure. Yeah, I'd say. Yeah. I just I don't know. Anyway, what else? You got any other topics, Matt? I know you had a couple there.
Well, the man John Lewis wants us to start doing some current events.
Yes.
So I just looked around at some
current events,
like news.
Yeah, just stuff in the hunting world. So I just looked around today in Mass, which I know isn't home for you, Eric, but it's pretty close for us. They had some Mass Wildlife had a meeting a couple days ago, and one of the things on the that they're trying to push forward is sunsetting all of the deer farms, all enclosed deer herds, to try and prevent possible CWD outbreak.
That's interesting because I'm naive. Or just ignorant. Are there deer farms in Mass?
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know how many or where they're at.
Was any? Oh, I guess. Well, there are some in New Hampshire. Not many. I think I could think of maybe like 2. Yeah. I think there's more. Probably more than you think.
Yeah, I know that there's smaller ones. Yeah. Obviously, people I don't know if they do it as a hobby or what, but yeah, that was just one of the things. There was a few other things on there. They talked about on Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket Island.
Yeah.
Apparently the deer populations are like 50 to 70 deer per square mile. So they're talking about having a flintlock season late.
Really? Past in January?
Yeah.
Like PA almost? Like
I don't know exactly what the dates were but I would assume it would be late.
See, I think like in Mass and like a lot. So my brother-in-law used to live on the vineyard, and I've been on there, and I actually had permission on a piece. I never ended up hunting it, and I had a bunch of deer, but I feel like the problem is not more hunter opportunity; it's more hunter access in those areas.
Yeah,
like
as soon as you open the door, it's gonna. Well, people are gonna find their way. I feel like.
But like a lot of the areas there, you just can't hunt, and it's like a lot of these suburban areas where they want to bring the deer. And it is effectively suburban on those islands. Like it's pretty suburban. Like it's there's woods and pockets of like deer habitat, and sometimes it's a few hundred acres, but. I think the bigger problem is like they just don't allow hunting, and there's a lot of like places you can't hunt, and so those deer are always going to have those pockets where they're not hunted, and it's going to be difficult to bring the population down like a significant amount because like just hunters don't have access to like those big
and the deer will naturally kind of figure out where the danger is, and
then we see that like in our unit M&L here in New Hampshire, which is our like 2 southeast suburban more units where it's like. They want to kill more deer, but like the actual huntable places, like aren't even that many deer like in those areas anymore.
Oh, I tried hunting. I did hunt a power line, and I was just driving to and from a trail that I usually go walk at, and I saw a decent 8 out in a field, and I was like, this is the only chunk close to that that I can that I would be able to hunt. So I went in there and just went to sit and see how it went, just kind of as an observation. And I bumped 3 deer walking in that were bedded 30 yards away from the back of a house.
Yeah,
and that was
you can't do anything with them there,
right? So, and that's not an uncommon thing where I'm at.
Yeah, you probably see some of the same stuff down. Well, I don't know. Do you think the cities out there have the same thing, like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse? I mean, I actually hunted pretty close to the city limits in Syracuse back in the day, but there's just a lot of areas where like you can't hunt them, and so how do you control them?
Yeah, so interestingly, a neighboring town right here, a friend of mine's on the board, the town board, and he's like, "You want to shoot some deer in March?" And it's in a suburban area, not a big city. It's not like Syracuse, Rochester, it's smaller, but they want to kill like 30 deer that are in these housing areas, and it's got to be archery, and it's got to be at night, and it's got to be March. So I don't know. Like, I don't even know. I was trying to think when he's talking to me. I'm like, I don't even know how the heck you can bait them. You can bait them.
Really?
So you're allowed bait, but
how do you shoot a boat? You need a spot.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. So what are you going to do? Like set up in a blind and then all of a sudden blast the light? Now I don't know. And then you got to get the shot. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like down south, one of those hog lights.
That doesn't. So can you use a crossbow?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, that would be the way to do it with a light because you have a scope.
Yeah.
But they're asking for major issues if they're relying on guys who shoot bows at night and make accurate shots at night in March on deer on a corn pile.
You don't want these things. You imagine going into these, people's backyards at night with a light. I mean, I think it's out in the open. I mean, the public's supposed to know about it, but nonetheless, people some of them aren't happy about it, but they did get it passed. So there's your late, modern, what do you want? Recent news. That's, if you guys want to come and do it, I know they're looking for, they got one guy signed up, and I said I would think about it. I mean,
yeah, you really actually got to think about how that would work.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't even have a good answer for it. I have to see the area. He says he's got one like open area that they're going to try to.
It has to be like after dark.
Yes.
So like you can't like shoot in the last 10, 15 minutes illegal.
I mean, I
feel like that would be.
I don't know. Yeah. I think they're just trying to be discreet about it. Is why they're saying night. And then, the fact, you bait them and whatnot. The only thing I got thinking is you get a full moon night, and maybe you can at least if they're there, at least you'll be able to tell if they're there. And then
if you got snow,
and I don't know. I mean, these are, these deer. Number one, they're suburban deer, so they're not going to be as spooky. And then at night, I don't know. Maybe you can get fairly close to them. Maybe just walk. You know what I mean? You may not have to.
I'm just worried about the archery aspect. That's hard enough to shoot whitetails during the daylight, and now you can't see. That's what I'm worried about. Like that's the part. It's like you got to figure that out. I don't know. Maybe you can put.
Maybe we'll do a video. Maybe we'll do a show on it. You imagine? Cody he'll try. I mean,
Cody would love it. He'll be like, sweet.
Yeah. He'll try. Yeah.
The deer farm thing is just, I don't know. It's a tough one. You hate to tell people what they can do in their own land. But I guess when it starts affecting, large scale wildlife, it becomes tricky.
I was looking at the map, and state by state, where all the clusters of cases of CWD in captivity, it's surrounded in almost every case by deer that aren't in captivity. That surrounding county is whether that's the only documented cases in the area or in that county.
I mean, it's all from deer
it all comes together.
It is all from deer. I mean, that's what you see. I remember the county I hunted in Ohio, same thing. And then they had it in New York. It was like
very central New York.
Yep, it was like near Lake Lake Oneida, like Rome, Verona area. Is where, because I remember I hunted that area in college, and it was same thing, deer farm. Like, I don't know. So I guess there's a pretty strong correlation between the deer farms and the outbreaks of CWD. So I guess they do have a point there.
I don't know how I feel. I'm not educated enough on the whole thing as far as whether it's. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's been here for
Well, I don't think we
since
actually
the 60s,
know how
the,
old.
The 60s was like the first documented case, as far as I know.
I heard someone talking about saying that's the first documented case when they actually discovered it, but like it could have been in deer populations for like a long way before that. So it's tough to say. I don't know. I don't think it's a good thing in general. It's just tough to kind of know how big and serious of a deal it is. I know I don't probably want to eat a deer with CWD.
Well, I mean,
I don't know if I ever shot one, but
in places like Wisconsin where we were at, I mean.
Oh, you were, because that's where you guys.
We were in
right?
like the heart of.
Yeah,
I think it was like one of the worst counties in the country, and they were estimating it was like 50% of deer, if not more, had it, and I believe they would give you another tag if you.
Well, how many had Eric shot? Eric had shot like several that tested positive, right?
Yeah, I think
Eric
he said
Barber.
Yeah, I think he said he had.
Oh.
I don't remember if it was him.
Oh no!
But I know he's killed at least he's killed positive deer, and I'm almost positive he also said that he had eaten at least one of them. Yeah,
that explains a lot.
I can't remember. I can't remember if it was him. Somebody that I want to say it was him was saying like he didn't want to feed it to, or he wouldn't feed it to family, but he would eat it himself, which I kind of agree with. I'm like,
those doesn't he the one that drinks the Manhattans all the time too?
Yeah,
Barber.
Yeah, that's
Well, it voids it out. You know, he drinks the Manhattans and just kills that off.
Kills the disease.
We've got. Hey, you talk about recent news. Just this morning, they're finding the bird flu in snow geese.
Yeah.
They're finding them dead, and they got bird flu.
Yeah, from like 4 or 5 birds or something like that.
Where was? Do you know where?
Dead around a pond. It was
I think they said Romulus was some.
Oh, in New York.
Right around. This is local news. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
They found a handful of birds around this pond that all had it. They were all found dead.
I wonder if this disease has always been a thing in natural like wildlife populations, but we're just more aware of it now because we can test for it, and we're like. We have a better handle on them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the other thing I saw is rabies, too. There's been a bunch of positive rabies cases in the North Country, like Coas County.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that, too. Rabies is making a comeback. So, Jesus Christ.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, stay away from possums, raccoons, and whatever else gets them. We actually had, when I was a kid.
Skunks, probably.
Yeah, skunks. That's what it is. We had a rabid raccoon. In our yard, we had sled dogs back then, so we had our kennel of sled dogs, and we just go outside and we got like this. We had Alaskan Malamutes at the time. We got this like 80, 90, whatever, I don't know, big, huge Alaskan Malamute male, and he's like nose to nose with this raccoon that's like 15 pounds, and he's like trying to like it's like what is this wrong with this thing? And it's like it was rabid, and I remember. My dad was out there, and he just grabbed a rock and just frickin' stoned it with this big rock. And then we remember he called the police, and the thing was like out, but he shot it again, and it tested positive for rabies. I think my dad had, and the dog that was face to face him, my dad had to take some, I think, medication for it. But
there's all types of hoops you have to jump through.
Yeah.
We had like pictures of one. I remember I was super young, but I still kind of vaguely remember it. There was this rabid raccoon just sitting in the driveway, middle of the daytime, like middle of the winter, and it was just kind of like pacing around.
I feel like there's not. Did you guys have that stuff? Like, do you remember rabid? Yeah. But do you remember any lately? No, I don't.
No, I think the only time it would come up is you just see one acting goofy, and you'd be like, "Well, that one maybe rabbit or whatever." But I mean, once in a while you'll see one like that. Yeah.
I just don't remember like any lately. I remember when we were kids, like that was a thing. There was like rabid raccoons, but like I haven't heard anything about it. And then I saw something the other day that there's like a bunch from up north again. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
These wildlife diseases.
Whether that's the thing of the week they want to try and scare people with, who knows?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What do we got for time? Let's talk, Eric. So one thing I like to talk to you about is bow setups and arrows and all that stuff. So,
oh boy,
why don't you? I think it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of variability among bow hunters on their equipment, if that makes sense. And not only that, like their I'll say shot selection, and they're like almost their philosophy and how they set up their bows, and then how their bow system works for them, and how they view like that whole thing. So like, why don't you give us like your gear breakdown? It doesn't have to be like this is the model bow. Like in general, like what you look for in a bow, an arrow, a broadhead, a sight, or a lease, and then like your idea of like shot selection and like the shots that you typically are looking for and comfortable with taking, if that makes sense.
And for those people who don't know, Eric doesn't like to use rifles at all. He likes to take a bow and a rifle, or take exclusively a bow and a rifle season. So,
yeah, I catch hell from those certain members of our group, but I just feel like you need to read about it and do your research, right? Like you got to have sources that you trust on this type of stuff, right? Because as an individual, you're only going to shoot so many animals, right? You're going to have so many, living proof of your setup. All right. So find people that you trust and do your research, and then, trial and error is the other part of it. I think that you should have maximize your setup to be as lethal and have as many options when you're going to shoot an animal. Okay. So what does that mean? And this is where it gets a little cloudy at times, and it depends who you listen to or what you want to believe. But I don't tend to go extreme one way or just, high end, low end, like whatever. I think I like to be in that middle. So if you're talking, where you want to start, you want to do broadheads, I've kind of I like the fixed blades, but I think there's been some improvements on mechanical stuff over the years where they're tougher and they'll withstand stuff. And if you have the right setup, meaning enough weight, enough arrow weight, that I'm buying into the argument of that bigger hole and it not being such a handicap, because it used to be a handicap, right? You weren't shooting enough poundage. You had too light of arrows, not enough front of center, where that 2-inch cut looked great on the way in, but it was 0 on the way out, right? And that's where, you go back to the fixed blade. So, my arrow thing, Brett and I think are really similar, 520 some grains, total weight, a lot of, front of center pretty high. I want to shoot as much weight as I can, and these new bows and the draw cycles and stuff, like 80 pounds is really no problem, right? So there's like the rundown of it. And I just think if you've got a really good broadhead, whether it's a fixed blade, and we can get into what ones are best, but fixed blade's great, but even a really strong, sharp as heck mechanical. And man, I shot a doe this year almost dead on. I mean, a slight quarter. And this is a mechanical head with that setup that I'm talking about. It actually wasn't even 80 pounds. I think it was like 76 or something. But that thing went completely through the long way of the body and legit sliced in half 6 ribs. And I was like blown away with that. I'm like, I know it was a doe, and it was a decent, it wasn't a huge doe, but a mid-sized doe. Yeah. And I was just like, I had the confidence that I could take those shots based on that setup, and just to see that devastation. I mean, it was incredible. She ran like 30 yards and that was it. I don't want to get too heavy and get too slow, because then, you get situations where deer have more time to get out of the way. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where I'm at with this stuff. I feel pretty good about it. And that's been an evolution over time, research and whatnot. I mean, I used to shoot 375 grain arrows. You know what I mean?
It's me too.
Yeah.
There's deer on this wall that I killed with arrows like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I think that's all legitimate. I think if there's any knock on fixed blades, it's probably blood trails, Yeah.
Maybe arrow flight. If you don't really, really tune it, maybe arrow flight.
Yeah,
longer distance.
For sure. That's for sure. I have run into, since I tune my own bows, like we're in my bow shop right now talking. But
I need to go there.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You need to come. Yeah. We'll do another one live. But I have had zero issues since I've started tuning my own stuff getting fixed blades to fly. Like in the whole reason that I used to shoot expandables, because I was worried about that, and I was worried about not only so bows have a potential to become out of tune at some point, right? Like something can change, a string can stretch, something can shift, or even if you tune your bow and you're shooting a particular way and you haven't shot in a while and your form falls apart, like your bow is tuned to you. So if you change something inadvertently or unknowingly, like you could potentially affect your arrow flight, and so your bow could be out of tune. And I was worried about that. And so I resisted shooting fixed blades for a long time because of that reason. I was like, I don't want to have to worry about if something happens or if, my bow isn't perfectly tuned. That was, when I was not really tuning my own stuff. And it was like, it was basically like, if I have a major issue, I got to go to a pro shop to get it. It's like, if it's hunting season, I want to go hunting tonight or I'm on a trip. Like I guess if I'm on a trip, I don't have access to my bow press anyway. But, it's not an easy fix. Like, and I didn't have a pro shop close by. So that was a concern. But when I got my own bow press and started tinkering with arrow or bow tuning or whatever and learning how to do it, I realized that like if you have a really well-tuned bow and you spend the time up front to do that, then there's like a minimal risk that you're going to have arrow flight issues, particularly if you have a broadhead that is good in flight. You have a good fletch for whatever arrow you have, a good stabilizing fletch, and your spine is matched correctly. Like I've actually found that my bow can be slightly out of tune and still get accurate broadhead flight. I mean, I don't want that, but it's like I'm still going to kill a deer if I'm shooting it at 30 yards. You know what I mean? So that's the one thing I'll say. I think if you don't know anything about bow tuning and do nothing and don't understand it, I probably would shoot an expandable or a mechanical head. But I would encourage people to learn about that stuff if they're going to be bow hunters for more than a minute. I think it's a really good idea. The arrow weight thing, I agree with you. And I think the one thing that the heavy arrow guys, and I would say I consider myself a heavier arrow guy. I mean, I've shot 640 grain arrows at whitetails. That's, to me, is really extreme for a whitetail arrow. And I've just kind of like walked it back. So like you, I started at like the high 300s and shot, a 2-blade Rage broadhead out of going 300 something feet per second. Like I did that for a while, and like that works half the time, a lot of times, until it doesn't. Then I went to the other side and shot a 6 whatever, and it's like you're really lobbing those damn things. I was shooting an 80-pound bow, but still, I mean, I'm going, I don't know. It was probably like 240 or something like that when you get up that heavy, maybe 250. And I've kind of been walking it back down. And I think before I jumped heavy, I was at like 480, went to 640 fixed blade. And then when I was at 480 or 485-ish, I was shooting a mechanical. And I thought that heavy high 400s mechanical arrow, I'm like, I'll be fine. And then I hit a buck in the ball joint of the shoulder and was not fine.
Yeah.
It was a poor result. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to need more than that if I'm going to go through that shoulder. Cause like that arrow just completely deflected off that deer's shoulder blade. Like didn't even get in the cavity. Like just hit and just went straight down. I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I had the same experience.
Yeah. So I was like, that's not even close to what I expected. So then I jumped heavy, and I'm like, I'm at this process now where I'm trying to find the head, arrow weight, and bow weight combination that allows me, that it's almost like, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but essentially the bare minimum to go through a whitetail, a big, 250-pound buck shoulder, or any angle that I don't have to worry about it, but still have a relatively decent arrow speed that I'm not like lobbing. The other thing that I think, and I'll go back to kind of what I was saying, I think the heavy arrow guys really ignore the fact of the slow speed and like the detriment that has, particularly on your trajectory. And if you're shooting 240 feet per second, the difference between 34 yards and 39 yards is you miss the deer. And that's a big deal. Yeah. Like that's a really big deal. Whereas if you're going 300 feet per second, it's a few inches. So, that's something that there's something to be said. So that's a big reason I've been kind of inching down. I think I'm at 530 maybe ish.
Yeah, I thought you were pretty close. I thought we were about the same almost. Yeah. And that's with the lighted knock and all that,
Yeah, it's a total arrow weight. Yeah. So I want to stay heavy enough because that I don't want to worry about that shoulder blade. That's my thing. Like I don't want to worry about a whitetail shoulder blade. I think going through any point of that shoulder blade on a mature whitetail buck is super achievable with modern archery equipment and a fixed blade head and a heavy enough arrow. I just don't know where that line is right now, and I'm trying to find it. But I don't want to go way below it and have a major failure either, so I'm kind of creeping on it. And I mean, I shot that buck in Canada, that velvet buck right there, big deer, 5-year-old buck, with a 80-pound bow and a 590 grain arrow in 22. And I went through at 30 yards, 32 yards, something like that. So pretty average shot distance. And I went through both scaps on that buck. And the second one was like down near the ball, like the beefy, like down near the humerus almost. And I kind of don't think I need that much penetration on a whitetail if I can go through both, right? I need to go through one. It's nice to go through both, right? But I don't need to sacrifice the speed to go through both. If I can get through one 100% of the time and into the lungs and, at least off into the other side of the shoulder, I'm happy. So I'm trying to figure out where that is, I guess. That's kind of my thought on it, but I agree with you. The expandables they just make me nervous. Like, I'm not denying that, like, I want to see it first. I want, like, all these new ones, like, you shoot them. I just, like, want to see it. Like, for, like, 5-6 years of people going through shoulders and no deflections. And that's the big thing, I think, that I'm worried about. I know a lot of times they will go through stuff, but they get some really weird arrow paths once they go into deer that I've seen, where they're going in and they're running along ribs, or they're like deflecting down, or like they go up. Well, usually when they go up, they hit the spine and you're fine because the deer drops, right? But like, I don't know. That's the stuff that worries you. The other thing that I don't like about expandables is I don't know that anybody purposely shoots for shoulders with expandables. I think they mostly try to avoid them. And I just think that when you are trying to avoid shoulders consciously, you're just not shooting in the most lethal spot in a deer.
I would agree with that. And
I find that since I stopped worrying about shoulders, and that was it hasn't been as long. I haven't shot that many deer with these heavier arrows and fixed blades. 2019, so I'm only 5 years into this. I've shot a fair amount of animals in those 5 years with the bow. But I found that most of the deer I shoot animals I shoot are not going very far, and they're dying within sight or just out of sight. So not that the blood trail thing could not be an issue, because I can see it being an issue. Obviously, I'm going to make a bad shot at some point. Everybody does. But in general, it's not an issue because I just see the animal die, or I'm like, oh, it ran over that rise, and I go over there and it's lying down. So the blood trail hasn't been really much of an issue for me. But I just don't like the idea of, I just don't like that subconscious thought of like, oh, that shoulder. And then you start to like subconsciously go off it. And then you're like off it even more because, you know, and it's just, instead of being like right tucked into that shoulder, you're like 12 inches back and low. And I don't know. I'm not a huge fan.
But I think that's the personal, see, it's mental for you, right?
Yeah.
So if you gain confidence in one, then that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
But I think like for you right now, there's that, you know, you got that skepticism. And so that's going to be you and you're shooting.
Yep.
And if that's the case, I'd say don't shoot them, you know?
Yeah.
You get in your head. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had,
I mean, like I say, I'm shooting one type of mechanical right now. I have fixed in my quiver.
Yeah.
There's one that I really like. There's another one that I'd like to shoot, but I don't think they're legal in New York for some reason. This is like a debate. I don't know. Maybe somebody knows, but those Bomars are impressive, but I don't, from what I get, I don't know. I get mixed reviews if they're even legal. So I haven't tried those ones yet.
Mm-hmm. They're definitely, I'd like to see. Yeah. So this is the thing I'll say about the beast ones, and I nothing about the actual broadhead because I don't know. All the footage in testing is from Josh Bomar shooting a 90-pound bow with like a freaking super heavy arrow. That's like, and I'm just like, I maybe maybe Sarah is shooting. I don't know. Maybe she's shooting him and she shot a bunch of stuff. I just always see Josh shooting this setup, and he also has like a freaking 30, probably the drawing length like you. So it's like the very extreme level of momentum, kinetic energy, arrow weight, like speed. Like it's like it's not a it's not a good representation of the average bow hunter.
I mean, you know, he is shooting at some really, really big, you know, like, you know, game we don't hunt around here. So I mean, you know, he's got a heck of a setup, but he is shooting at some big stuff too. I don't know. I can't, you know, I like the concept of them a lot. That one that I keep telling you about is an evolution head. That's the one that I like a lot. It's actually got a little fixed blade on the front, and then it opens up 2 inches, and those have been super just sturdy.
And those fly really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is confidence, right?
Yeah.
No doubt. Man, I've seen so many people shoulder shoot deer, and I'm just like, and you know, it's just boom, and the arrow is just like, and it's like the deer's,
I know.
And I'm like,
Did I show you a picture of the broadhead from the doe I shot this year that happened?
I don't know. Was it just curled tip?
Yeah. The thing was bent at a 90-degree angle. It was a G5. I'm shooting a 500.
Yeah, really, that was too.
It was a 500 and something grain arrow. Total arrow weight.
Here, I think. Still from that's actually the last one I shot.
It was like a 90-pound doe.
Was it one of those, or is it the bigger one?
It was the bigger one.
The bigger one, the mega meat. This is the dead meat. Yeah. That's the last expandable right there that I shot. And it has a really beefy ferrule. Right. These blades are pretty sharp. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea. It's just, I hit a shoulder blade of a Canadian whitetail with like out of an 80-pound bow. It was a little further shot, so I probably lost some momentum too. But it was just like, and the deer just like trotted off like nothing happened. I was like no blood, like it just didn't work.
And that was the end of that, huh?
Yeah, I just was like, man, that was a major failure, and like I didn't make the best shot either. Like I hit pretty far forward, but I just was like, I don't like that. Like that's not going to work for me going forward.
I just never want to have that in the back of my mind that's even a possibility.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I just feel like you need to be confident, and I feel like eventually. Maybe not with some of the stuff you're talking, Eric, when you're shooting heavier poundage and with, the arrows you're shooting and the broadheads. But I feel like these light arrow guys inevitably are going to have one of these major failures. Like if they're shooting fixed blades and light, I just think I just don't see how it can't happen. And I think a lot of them are making good shots and they're hitting deer, mid lung liver, and they're having good experiences. Or they're hitting them back a little bit, but they're finding the deer the next day type of thing. Which I just as a rule, don't love that philosophy of just like, I'll just shoot them back and get them tomorrow. Like, I just don't like that. It's for me personally. And anymore, coyotes are brutal. Like, half the time your deer's gone by the morning, And so, and I've had that happen. I just don't like that. So it's like, I watched a video the other day of a guy. I don't know if he got the deer or not, but he's shooting an expandable. I don't know what grain arrow he's at, but just I can't remember what kind of expandable it was, but like, he showed it to the camera and his shoulder hit this deer, and it was like, he might get it, but it's one of those ones, and I hate that. It's like, oh, I don't know, and then it's like one long hit, and it turns into this 3-day rodeo, and maybe you got the deer, but like, to me, that is just like ruins the experience, like having it happen like that. It's great to get the deer, but I'm like, I don't want that. I just want to shoot them confident and then watch them die, and be no blood trail. Like, that's my thing. Yeah. So I mean,
that experience for me was the tipping point for.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have that experience that's like, I don't want to think about that. I don't want that to happen again. And maybe I will shoot a deer back and have a shitty blood trail and, not be able to find them. But I rather have that than the alternative, which is a shoulder shot deer that I am not going to find because he's going to be dead in 2 weeks or he's not going to die at all. Like, I'd rather have, we got dogs now that are probably going to find a gut shot deer that dies, overnight or the next morning. Yeah. So, but I'll be honest, like, if I shoot a deer with, I'm shooting the iron will single bevels and not the wides. If I shoot a deer with those and I don't find him, and I struggle and have to have the dog and I find him, like 24 hours later, that is partially ruins the experience for me. Like, it does. Like, I don't feel like I fully succeeded in my mission when that happens. Yeah. I'm happy to find the deer. I'm proud of the deer, but like, it's not like that deer right there. That's not his Kate because I didn't find him right away. And I made a bad shot. And like, he's on the wall. I got a different Kate for him. He's a big giant buck that I was after all year. But it's not the same as some of the other ones because of that. So.
Yeah, we can get, this is a whole nother thing, but the experience of the hunt and what makes it special for you as an individual. We've gotten, I've talked a lot about this stuff lately, but it's part of the reason I choose just to hunt with a bow is because that's what's most gratifying, right? And you talk about, well, if you got a call on a dog, and I've done it, trust me, many times, it's not the ideal way that you want that hunt to end. So I think maybe it's age. I think it's experience, but there's certain things that we look for in a hunt to make it as rewarding, as fulfilling as we possibly can. And if we can control some of those things going in,
right,
great, because not every part you're going to be able to control. Nope. But let's control the things that we can control. That way it's what each individual is going to be different. You know what I mean? It's, some are going to be similar, some different, but like what I look for in a hunt, I tend to want to make it hard. I want to shoot them with a bow. I really like to do it on my own ground, and I want to do it at a certain age class. Is rack great? Rack score is great, but I will gladly pass a 163-year-old and shoot a 125-year-old. It's fine. Yeah. That's how I roll. I've done it long enough. It's okay. So, the more you learn about them, I think the more you have certain expectations or requirements you want to make your hunt, the most satisfying.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to clarify, like, I have no problem with tracking dogs at all. And I've used them and I'll use them again. And I think they're actually awesome. And it's not, I was going to say, in my mind, if you have to get a dog, you've made some sort of failure, but that's not necessarily true all the time. Sometimes weird stuff happens. Yeah, like you do double lung a deer and he goes this way and then goes behind like a thick patch and does a complete 180 and it's like, what the heck happened? Like, and you did make a great shot and you didn't go very far. So You can't say that. I mean, just because you've had to call a dog doesn't mean you didn't make a good shot or you're not a good tracker.
Oh yeah,
it just means
yeah.
that
We've done a lot of times we call dogs and the dang things are dead within 150 yards. But I don't know. Sometimes we've gotten a little bit cautious over the years that like just. When we got a good connection with one and we're like, just bring it in. It's a time. It can be a huge time savings too.
100%.
Laying tracks down all over the place and trying to find it. We had one a couple years ago. Ethan shot and crossed the creek and it was just it didn't go that far. He double lunged it, but brought the dog in and it went a hell of a lot quicker. So
no, dogs are great. I'm just saying, it's just in my ideal hunt. Sure. There's not a dog that I have. We all have.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like we have this ideal hunt, right? Yeah. Some we can control, some we can't. Yeah. And like, I want certain things to go a certain way. If I go shoot a deer with a rifle, it's not near as satisfying to me as doing it with a bow. Yeah. So I've done it enough where I'm like, okay, then just don't take the rifle. That way then you're not going to shoot them. You know what I mean? So
that seems to be the thing is like when you take the bow and the rifle, you always shoot it with the rifle. That's what I'm the same way. I've never taken a bow and a rifle and end up shooting something with a bow.
Don't give yourself the option. Yeah. I still will do it now and again because there's certain setups where it's like a real long shot, but just don't, if you don't take it, then you don't take it. And then you're going to limit yourselves on some setups for damn sure and make it difficult, but
the 2 times I've shot deer when I had both, I shot them with a gun in bow range. It's like, well, what are you doing? Why'd you even bring the bow then? It's like I panic and like, whoa, it's like, I'm like, I got to kill this thing. And I'm like, which weapon do you want? You want to make that thing dead as quickly and as efficiently as possible? Yeah, you got to grab the gun. It's just like, I still freaking do it. I actually think that, I haven't told John this, so newsflash too. I think that I am going to hunt the New Hampshire rut with a bow this year and not bring the gun. I think. We'll see.
That's a tough one. I mean, although I say that. I mean, you're get them on a scrape, right? I mean, you just so
No, I mean it's
that's spot.
Yeah, it's tough, but that's probably the spot that we if those deer are still doing that, which I think they will be. Yeah. That will be the spot, or there's another spot too that I hunted with Roy during the rut. That's really good too for that. Yeah, I don't think you've been quite up there, but it's
I know roughly where. Whereabouts.
No, I think that's. I mean, I'm gonna still hunt with for tracking. Like I'm gonna track if we get good snow. Like, and I'm not doing that with a bow. So I'm gonna hunt with a rifle. I'm not saying that I'm not gonna hunt with a rifle. There's certain things I want to do now. I think that I'm probably gonna lean. Because and I think I told you this, Eric, but like from 2008 to 2016, I didn't gun hunt at all.
Yeah, you told me that.
I didn't even ever take a gun out. I didn't want to. And then I started gun hunting again in 2016. Shot a lot more deer between 2016 and now than I did before. But I shot a fair amount with the bow too. And I've shot a lot with the gun. I've had fun, and we've had an awesome relationship with Mossberg, and I've shot a bunch with Mossberg rifles, and I will continue to. But I just think that I'm probably going to do a little bit more bow hunting coming up than I have. And not that I bow hunt a lot, but it's like, I guess what it comes down to is I may be bow hunting when I could be hunting with a gun. Whereas before it's like I bow hunt when it's bow season, and I'm probably gun hunting during the gun and muzzleloader seasons. But I think I'm going to probably be taking the bow and not the gun during gun season. This coming next few years. That's what I feel like I'm going to do. So let's talk about, what are you running for a sight? Because I think this is one that's overlooked. I can't remember. I think we talked about this, but what are you actually settled on?
Vertical pins, first of all. But 2 years ago, I shot the Spot Hog triple stack vertical. And that was and I love that. There's nothing wrong with it. I like it. And I did a lot of talking with you on that because you had one of those first.
Yeah, that's what I have on both my bows.
Yeah, and I like it. Don't get me wrong. And I set that thing where it was 20, 30, 40.
Yep.
And then that top pin, I would just I'd always use the top pin to dial.
Yep. The same thing
That
I
was
do.
my move.
Same thing I do.
Yeah. But I could still use that totally. But like this year, I got the new bow. I just put a Spot Hog single pin on there because I never found myself with that triple stack. I would just dial it no matter what. And then for me, going back to the mental, it's like if that thing's 31, or 32, like I have a hard time just putting my 30-yard pin on it. That's me again. So am I going to miss? Is there going to be a time when I maybe lose that extra 2 seconds to dial it? Maybe. But in my world, I need to be really confident I'm going to take that shot. And I don't know if I have it in me to
gap shoot.
If it's 35 yards, I'm not going to gap shoot it, and I'm not going to like hold the 30, high. Like it's just, I want to hold that thing where it needs to hit. And to me, it's going to be a single pin. I'm going to dial it. So
I feel the same way you do, but I force myself to I know, because I've had some experiences where I'm like, man, that might have gone different if I just had my 3 fixed pins and I just didn't. So this is what I do. I have this, obviously the same setup you had. Oh shit. Do I have one right here? I did have one right there. Whatever. Somewhere. In my bow stuff. This is the benefit of sitting right here and doing this podcast. So I can just grab gear and show it off. But anyway, same thing. Vertical stack, 20, 30, 40, adjustable pins so you can set them to yours. They're not just set at a whatever and they end up being whatever yardage. Yeah. They're fully adjustable. So 20, 30, 40. And so my how I do it now is if it's within, say, 43 yards, I do not dial. I don't touch that thing. Also, in my mind, within 43 yards is a super doable shot that I should be able to make on a whitetail, unless it ducks like crazy, right? But I should be very accurate out to 40 with a bow. So I should be able to make that shot without a problem. When you get past that yardage, then I dial. And I figure that if I don't have time to dial and really set in, it's say 45 or 50, whatever, then I probably shouldn't be shooting. So if I don't have that extra time to make that longer shot, I don't take it. So that's my thought process. If I'm going to have to make a quick shot at 25 yards or 33 yards, like I feel like I'm a good enough archer and I have good enough judgment in gap shooting. That's the other thing. The gap shooting thing in my head used to bother me, but when I started doing it and shooting at targets, like at 40 yards, it gets a little weird, but like 20 and 30 yards, both your pins are on that vital. You know what I mean? Like your 20-yard pin is mid-lung and your 30-yard pin's on the heart. It's like, I'm okay with that sight picture mentally. Like it doesn't bother me. Like I thought that it would, not having that precise aiming point. So yeah, my mind gravitates to exactly what you're saying. Like I feel what you're saying, but I just feel like it's. I think it potentially cost me a deer a few years back because I was getting.
You were dialing. You were screwing around dialing. You told me about that.
Yeah, I was dialing when it's like, why are you dialing? The deer was at like 24 yards, and I was just like. And he'd take a step, and I'm like, And actually, Justin in Canada got on me because I was doing that time. I actually probably should have taken more time, honestly, because I shot him for the wrong yardage. But actually, no, he got on me about a different deer. But anyway, it doesn't matter. He was like, "Hey, dude, that's gonna cost. You need to like stop that." It's like because it's like obsessive. It's like click. Oh, another step. Click. It's like I have to range him. He can't move. I have to dial. He can't move. Draw back. He can't move. And then I have to shoot him. And it's like, that doesn't always happen. Yeah. And it was like OCD for me to the point I'm like, I got to stop this. I can't do it anymore. Like it's going to cost me. So I feel really good about it now. I feel really good about it. And like the buck I shot in New York this year was at 48 or something like that. I think it was high 40s, and I had time on him, and I ranged him, and I dialed. I had and I had a lot of time, and it was where everything worked out good. So, but yeah, that's the only deer. I think it's the only deer I've dialed for, or animal I've dialed for, because I did shoot a bear. So anyway, it also helps when they're at like 20 yards. I've shot a fair amount pretty close the last few years. But.
Yeah, you can shoot them with most anything in that range, but
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's and then what about like shot angles? You're not really too afraid of a frontal recording too, or any? No, right?
No. I mean, will I wait if I think?
Yeah.
I won't wait too long though, because then, it is, man. You better, if you got a shot at him, you better go for it. But no, those frontals in the quartering too. No, from my experience in my own shots on these things, I haven't shot a mature one, big mature one frontal or quartering too super hard, so I can't say for sure, but does, I told you the story with the does. So no, but you got to have the right setup to do that. You definitely want the right numbers for sure.
If you're going to take those shots, you should probably look into it more than just like, oh yeah, this might work. I think you should probably do your research. And then what about your aiming point on do you have where do you aim? I guess.
As you know, I've had some issues with deer moving, and I think I've changed a little over the years. I tend to find myself going a little bit lower than normal. Definitely not afraid of the shoulder, but I'd say that. It depends. I don't want to overthink it. In the heat of the moment, you're not going to overthink it. You're not going to say, well, that thing's 30 yards alert, I'm going to go. If you're thinking clearly, you should say, well, I better put a little bit low if he's alert or whatever. But nonetheless, if I'm a third of the way up from the elbow or a little less, that's fine. That's good.
Are you never aiming off the deer or a place where if he doesn't duck, you don't kill it, do you? Because I know some people will hold below the deer, on the belly. No. Okay. Yeah. As I've heard people do that, and I'm like, that to me, I can't do that. The lowest I'll aim is middle heart or sometimes low heart. If I'm there's no way that this deer isn't going to duck. There's no way he's not ducking. I will, and I feel really confident in my shot. If I hit 3-4 inches low, I'm going to miss this deer. I shot at a deer in Ohio once, and I aimed very low because I had to stop him. It was meh, 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 like that, and he looked, and I was like, oh crap, and it was 40 yards, and I remember I held on his armpit, and I hit this much low. And he just literally stood there and didn't even move. And the arrow just went right, cut his arm, just white hair off his armpit, right to the other side. And then he ducked and ran off. I was like, oh my, I couldn't believe it. But I think most of the time at those, they're going to duck in that situation. Yeah. But I don't aim off the deer. I do like to aim low, but I'm not going to aim off the deer. Yeah. Even the duck the duck. Yeah, the duck stuck too. The buck I shot in Ohio at 18 yards, he got down there. He ducked a few inches before the arrow hit him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he have his head up too, I think.
Had his head down. I think his head has down so they can react way faster that way.
I couldn't.
At 18 yards though, you don't have a lot to worry about unless you're high, you aim mid lung and you hit a little high. Yeah, you do. But if you're aiming in a good place, they can't get, even on a slower bow, they really can't seem to get out of the way too much. So.
Yeah. Talk about slow bows. It's fun. My daughter could hunt, and I've been right next to her for most of her shots, and she's shooting just 40 pounds, and it's that arrow. I've seen it's like slow motion, you know. She's had so many deer, like she didn't even hit them, and she's shooting like 25 yards and just, you know, and the deer's out of the way.
They're just gone.
So that I get to witness the extreme of
Right.
the slow, you know what I mean? And I guess a slow miss is better than a
fast wound.
A slow wound, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, she shot that one this year. She got it pretty close.
So how close was she?
15, I think.
15. And did the deer duck? Like, did it still duck?
We weren't filming it, so I can't watch it slow motion. It was kind of one of them things, but not bad. No, it was a little spooky, but it wasn't too bad. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, anything else on the agenda, Matt?
Nope. Just same thing as last week. We just got some discount codes for Sirius Archery, for HuntStand, and for Deerage. We also are running 15% off everything over at the website, JUSTHUNTCLUB.com. You can head over to the website there and also drop your email if you're interested in signing up for the newsletter. Other than that, I'll put all those codes down in the notes.
I'll
tell grab
just a little more about the Deerage thing that people don't know. I've sent actually every buck that I've killed into Deerage. So it's Wildlife Analytical Laboratories, and they're out of Missoula, Montana. It is, I think, one of the things I look forward to the most when I kill a deer is finding out how old it is. And they can tell with a relative degree of certainty how old it is. There is variability sometimes, but usually on those samples where there is variability, they know it. So they can, if you're like curious, be like, hey, how certain you are? And some of them, it's like, oh, it's really clear. That was a 5-year-old deer or whatever. Some of them, they'll let you know. It's like, yeah, that one was not super clear. And that's where you get like the degree of like inaccuracy from those samples. But most of the time, they're pretty certain. And I've talked to the owners there. They're good people over there. And, yeah, it's a really cool thing. And really, any tooth on the whitetail's head, you can send in. The two front, bottom, and incisors are the ones that are the easiest to do. You can pop them right out after you kill a deer with a knife. It's really easy. We actually have a video on the YouTube channel if you want to learn how to do that. But yeah, it's cool, and it's become a huge part of like the hunt for me after the fact. And I'm actually waiting on. Actually, tomorrow I get the age back on that Ohio buck, which will be cool.
What are you guessing?
So, what's that?
What did you guess on that one?
Oh man,
you're gonna have it documented now, so let's see.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Zero knowledge of the deer, right. To be honest, zero knowledge of the deer in that area. Like I don't have any experience with those bucks. This is the first time I've hunted there, so I'm really kind of shooting. I would say this estimate is probably the least accurate. Of an estimate that I've probably ever made. My guess is he's 5.
I have a hard time believing in that environment that a deer would get much older than that. Not saying that it couldn't happen, but probability, there's just a lot of...
My guess is he's 5. His skeleton, he was such a long, tall deer. He was skinny, but he was really long and tall, and I just can't see a young deer growing a skeleton like that than growing that rack at like 4 years old or 3-year-olds. I did look at his teeth, the wear, which is not super accurate, but is an indicator of age. He didn't have a lot of wear on his teeth, but I've killed 5-year-olds and even 6-year-olds that didn't have much wear either. Actually, that buck right there, I know I had like hardly any wear, and he was 6.5. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd say 5.5 would be my guess on record. I don't know. Yeah. He could be 4. I can't see him being 3. He could be 4. He could be much older. I don't think he's. I'd say 5. That'd be my guess. We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
But it's sometimes it's tough. Like I was so wrong on that Canadian deer. The age, he was 3.5.
Which Canadian?
The one I killed this year with the rifle.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I was
you were
like
thinking
wrong
that was
on him. So like. You can be wrong, but anyway, I think it's really cool. It's a cool thing to do. Yeah. And you send yours in, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is you get it. It lets you realize like what's possible. You know, like are these deer you're killing? Are they? I mean, is it possible? Like we had one. I think one thing I've learned over the years with that aging is just because a deer is super heavy and big bodied, there's just like humans, right?
Oh,
there's humans that are just big framed. It doesn't mean that they're older,
right?
You know, it's deer the same way. Like we used to think, why that thing, most people still do it. That big body, huge body thing, small, small rack, and it's got to be old. Well, it's not always the case. There's a buck that, Ethan killed a few years ago. And that thing ended up being a 3.5-year-old, and that thing was giant, big, but that's what it was, So it gets you the real story,
Yeah, no, it's cool to test yourself, and
yeah,
like you said, you just start to learn about the deer in your area, like to the point where, like, if you hunt an area, you get pretty good at guessing their age,
Yeah,
because you have that feedback. Because people will guess age, but they don't actually send teeth in, so they don't actually know. Like they think they know. Well, I had this picture. Even if you have a picture of a buck for a couple of years, like that's not a lock that you know how old he is.
Yeah.
I've been around.
That's a great tool. Yeah, it's a great tool. That's your measure. Yep.
Yeah, so check that. Like I said, if anybody has a deer at the taxidermist, let the taxidermist know. It's not too late, unless if completely got rid of the teeth. But if it's in a freezer with the head. You can actually you can pull it off. You have a Euro here. You can pull a tooth off of a Euro mount too and send that in to be aged. They can age those molars as well. So if you have a Euro mount, pull one in the back, you'll never see it, and you can send it in.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I've done it. I did it on one of these. I don't remember which one, but I have sent molars in before. So some of the teeth are missing, but that's not because I pulled them. It's because when I boiled the heads, their teeth fell out. That's not by design. That's yeah. But anyway, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We should be coming out with these pretty consistently now. We're gonna keep on rolling. Let us know in the comments. If you have any suggestions, guests you want to hear from, topics you want to hear about, how you think, be critical of us, talk some smack. There's always people that want to do that. Bring it on. I love it. I laugh at most of those comments. They're fun. So, let us know what you think, and we'll see you on the next one.